Hello and welcome to Wholehearted Success, Self-Love and Courageous Action for a Business and Life You Love. I'm Nicole Moorey, Personal Success and Empowerment Coach, supporting the personal side of women's entrepreneurial lives. And I'm thrilled today to introduce to you Cailen Ascher. Welcome.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. I'm so glad to have you here. And before we dive into everything, I just want to, say that I love that you work with women entrepreneurs who want to work 3-day work weeks for 6-figure years and success on their own terms. And I'm fascinated that your specific niche is around clarity, because that's such a huge piece of wholehearted success.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, but I'd love to hear in your own words, some of the work that you do.
Sure, of course. So I think the reason my business is focused around clarity, and I call myself a clarity coach for the women that I work with, is that I was lacking that for so long. I was an entrepreneur. I had a number of different businesses over the course of about 7 or 8 years before I finally got the clarity that I needed to build the business that I have now. And once I got that, once I had a sense of, okay, this is what I really want to be doing, this is how I can package together all my strengths and experiences to serve other people, things really took off in a big way, in a way that they never had before. And so I realized that when you can harness that clarity, it collapses time. It moves you so forward so much quicker. And so I was really excited to be able to, in my own way, facilitate that for other women and be a catalyst for the clarity in their lives so that they could experience that same shift from kind of feeling unclear and a little overwhelmed and sort of murky about where they're going and what they're doing, to transforming that vision, having a really clear vision and moving that into a plan of action to move them forward in their lives.
So true. And that phrase, collapses time, I'm sure many women's ears perked up, because can't we all use that extra time in the day? So
Sure.
I'm super excited now to hear your idea of wholehearted success. How would you define that?
That is such a beautiful question. For me, wholehearted success is really defining success on your own terms. I think we hear that word success and it's thrown around so much. We have success coaches right and left, everywhere. I mean, especially on Facebook, I feel like everywhere I go, at least the business I'm in, I see that term. And it's a beautiful concept, helping people find success. But when we're subscribing to someone else's version, it feels really unfulfilling. But in order to get to that wholehearted place, I think you need to find that clarity, find what it means for you. And for some people, it's a really big vision, right? They have this 7-figure business they want to build. They want to be speaking to hundreds of thousands of people and having this international presence. And for someone else, success might mean making just a beautiful little income that supports their life and being able to be home with their children at a cozy cottage with a white picket fence. It could be really what other people might think as smaller, but it's perfect for them. And so what I love to do with my clients, and what I think is so beautiful about this series that you're putting together, is that it really encourages people to explore what success even means for them, instead of just assuming that it's the same for everyone, more money, more influence, bigger reach. It's very individual. And so to get to that wholehearted place, it takes some introspection and some time to sit with, what does this even mean for me? And am I willing to redefine what people might expect of me when it comes to success?
Mm-hmm. So back to what you do is getting clarity on what success means to the woman.
For
And
sure.
for myself, I call myself a personal success coach, but I'm coming from the place that you've just described, is that, defining what that personal success means to ourselves first.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's wonderful. I'm wondering your thoughts around this whole concept of self-love. So when we're looking at that wholehearted success in our overall life, and business, of course, is a part of that, what are your thoughts around self-love?
That's a very interesting question to ask, especially of women, because I think, we're so good about giving love to others, but when it comes to returning that love for ourselves, it can feel a little challenging. And it's actually something that I personally work on. It's one of my personal practices is to is to approach myself in a more loving way. I know that I can fall into this sort of masculine energy when it comes to my business, where it's, just push forward and, control all the moving pieces. And when I'm in that space, I don't feel good. I don't function at my best. And so that softening is so important. And so for me, self-love involves a lot of self-care practices. I have a morning meditation that I sit for every day. I practice yoga. My practice is a little different. You probably can't see on the video, but I'm about 8 months pregnant. So thank you. My practice is a little different now. It's a little slower. It's even more nurturing, probably more filled with self-love rather than pushing myself to kind of get a workout in with my yoga. I do a lot of journaling. I read personal development books like it's my job, which it kind of is in some ways. It's always helpful working with my clients, having done that work myself. And so for me, it's really about giving myself the time I need to go in and find that centered place so that I can serve my clients from that place and approach my family from that place as well. Because if we're not giving ourselves the love we need, we certainly don't have that overflow to share with others.
Absolutely. And I love that idea of the centered place. As I was designing this series, that was my whole concept, is we need to put ourselves at the heart of our lives, at the heart of our being, really, and then create from that place. I'm wondering, when you do practice self-love, have you noticed how it ripples out into the rest of your life?
For sure. Yeah. I have a very different day when I start with my meditation and my grounding practices versus when I just kind of launch myself into the day. And so part of what that means for me is I'm an early riser. And so I make sure that I get up before my daughter gets up, and she's an early riser too. And so what some may feel like is a compromise actually is a really nurturing thing to do for myself. And so I think, if anyone out there is struggling with that concept of, when can I find the time for myself? I mean, for me, it's getting up a half hour, an hour earlier than my daughter to make sure I have that time. Or when I'm driving in my car, running errands or to the grocery store, maybe popping in an audiobook that really I know will inspire me, or listening to a podcast. So kind of fitting it into those moments that maybe we would just breeze through or not give ourselves otherwise.
Right. And as you speak, I'm reminded of one of your free gifts that you have as a calendar. And it strikes me that, using a calendar such as that to, carve out the time so that you can devote, the time for these self-care practices can be really helpful.
Yeah, what you mentioned, it's the 3-day work week schedule. I work 3 days a week in my business. A lot of people ask me how I decided to do that. And it was actually just out of necessity. I had child coverage for my daughter 3 days a week. And so that's what I built my business around. And now it's become this kind of phenomenon, and people want to talk about it all the time, which is really cool. But that particular guidebook that you mentioned, it shares my calendar and shows you from morning till night what I'm doing during each hour of the day. So you have a sense of what hours I'm working in the self-love, self-care stuff, what hours I'm working in my business, and when I am working my business, what I'm doing, and how to find that balance for yourself. And it has a template there, as well as a lot of tips, tools, and strategies to help you define your ideal work week as well.
Nice. Yeah, it's a really great resource. So the ladies can grab it if they're interested. Now let's move into the next topic, is the whole idea of courageous action. So when it comes to wholehearted success, how have you noted that taking courageous action in your life has resulted in, success in other areas of your life?
Yeah, I think one of the most courageous things we can do is to keep showing up and keep putting ourselves out there. And that's something that, looking back, I'm really proud of myself for. Like I said at the beginning of our conversation, I was on this entrepreneurial path for a long time before I finally found the clarity that I needed and landed on the perfect business model, and really found that expansive place where the momentum shifted and my business began kind of having a life of its own rather than me constantly giving of myself to it. And so I think that's one of the most courageous things I've done, and that anyone can do, is to believe in yourself and your vision and your purpose on this planet enough to keep going, even when things come up and obstacles arise and failures befall you. And honestly, I don't really believe in failure. I think it can always be, it's a lesson. It might be a painful lesson, but it helps you if you're willing to move beyond it. If you're willing to get yourself back up and keep going, it's not a failure. And ultimately, it'll serve not just you, but probably the people you're hoping to serve, because now you have this experience to share with them. And so, yeah, I think the courageous piece is just showing up and sticking to it and being in it for the long haul. Because, if we're just hoping for overnight success, that I don't think that really happens. There's lots of stories that make it seem like it happens, but it normally those overnight successes have 3, 5, 10 years under their belt before they appear that way.
Yes. And I love how you chose the term showing up, because that strikes me as, something that women could learn to do a little bit more of, not only in showing up and taking the action, but just showing up, being visible, having a voice, and just going forward with what they want for their own lives.
For sure. That is true. And it takes some vulnerability, and it doesn't feel comfortable, to put yourself out there. And when we're building our businesses, it's so easy to retreat into them and think, oh, I'm just going to create a lot of great content, and I'm going to get my website looking really good, and then I'll put it out there. But I think I hear this phrase a lot, that done is better than perfect. And sometimes just showing up and putting yourself out there, if you can even just help one person, it's so much more valuable to have your message and your mission out there and helping others, rather than holding yourself back.
Yes. And when you think about the clients that you serve, or even your own personal experience, can you think of tips that you give them, or words of encouragement when it comes to maybe taking that first courageous act?
Something that I invite them to do is to imagine what success on their terms. So what their most successful self would do in any given situation. So if they're feeling like, oh, I shouldn't do that, or am I ready for this? What does that authentic you, that inner guide, that inner mentor, what would she do in this situation? I bet she would show up. She'd send the email. She'd put herself out there. She'd share the information. She'd launch the program. She would go for it, because that's what moves you forward. That's what helps you expand personally, expand professionally. And so I think that's it's a playful practice. Don't take it too seriously, but if you're sitting on something, if you're sitting on a good idea, if you're not putting something out there, remind yourself, is this how I truly want to be moving through the world? Is this how that successful version of me would be moving through the world? And if you feel like there's a misalignment there, see if there's a way you can step in that direction and maybe take a little bit of a bolder stance, or a bigger step, or show up in a bigger way.
Wonderful. Well, Cailen, I could talk about this with you all day. However, we're going to let you go. But before you go, I'm wondering, do you have any current passion projects that you're working on besides growing a baby?
Yes.
Anything else you want to share with us before you go?
Oh, yeah. It's really interesting, talking about the schedule piece. Obviously, with the baby arriving in the next month or so, I've been in content creation mode, so that I still have lots of great stuff rolling out for my community, even while I take a few months off, with my little daughter on the way and my 2-year-old daughter, who is very excited about the arrival of her little sister. And so there's some really beautiful things in the works. I have a plan book that's going to be launching in April, that's going to help people define their vision and then transform it into a clear plan of inspired action. It's something my community's been asking for, and I'm really excited that that's created, and it will be rolling out even while I'm probably, going to be cuddling on the couch with a little 1-month-old.
Beautiful. Well, congratulations again.
Thank you.
I'll be sure to include the links to your website so that people can look into all the wonderful resources that you have to offer.
Oh, thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And thank you again for participating. And on behalf of Cailen and I, we would like to wish all of you wholehearted success in your business and life. Bye for now.